Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambudhassa. Today, we're going to study the great sutra on the cutting off of craving, but in reality, our focus isn't on the sutra itself. Our focus is on the 12 links of dependent origination. So, this will be an independent study, and will only bring in the sutra at a few necessary points to support the arguments we want to make. Oh, I forgot to ask, who has beautiful handwriting? Please write the 12 links of dependent origination on the board for me. The origin of this sutra is similar to the one on the simile of the snake. In it, a monk named Sati, the son of a fisherman, developed a wrong view, which the Buddha called an evil view. He believed that a person's consciousness remains the same when they are reborn from one life to the next. Sati thought that our consciousness is a fixed entity, staying with us as we move from life to life. But when this idea was presented to the Buddha, he criticized it severely because he said this concept was exactly like the ideas of other non-Buddhist religions. For example, if a person were to be reborn as a dog, would they still have the same human consciousness? That's completely illogical and incorrect. So he reprimanded him. This reprimand became the occasion for the Buddha to reaffirm the 12 links of dependent origination. He used this teaching to show that consciousness is not fixed and to explain the true cause of rebirth and reincarnation. Therefore, we won't follow the sutra closely, as it's very long. We'll go straight into the 12 links of dependent origination and explain each one. Normally, when we study the 12 links, we divide them into 3 lives: the past, the present, and the future. And we say that from ignorance to consciousness is the past life, from mentality materiality to clinging is the second life, and from becoming to birth, old age, and death is the third life, which is the future. But I think this is wrong. Based on the sutras and their meaning, I believe it's not accurate. The Buddha only spoke of 2 lives in the 12 links of dependent origination: a previous life and the next life. He didn't mention past, present, and future. This is because the process of rebirth only requires a cause to produce a result. In the previous life, the cause is the chain from ignorance up to clinging, and the rest, becoming, birth, and old age and death, are the results in the next life. So, there's no need for 3 lives, just the previous and the next. And in the previous life, the links start from the most subtle and move toward clinging. Clinging here isn't about being attached, as we often say. Clinging here is the actual act of creating karma. But to create these karmic actions, we must start with ignorance. And what is ignorance? It's the most subtle state of all. It gradually becomes coarser and coarser until it manifests as the obvious, coarse act of creating karma. So, we'll study the process from the subtle to the coarse. This is the cause in the previous life, which then leads to the manifestation of a new being in the next life. This is why the Buddha only spoke of 2 lives, not 3. There is another reason why many people believe there are 3 lives. They define the links this way: volitional formations are karmic actions, and consciousness is the soul that enters the womb. They say that out of ignorance, beings create these karmic actions, and these actions cause the soul to enter the womb and become mentality materiality, which is then reborn into a new life. Frankly, it's not that simple. If you read the sutras, you'll see that in this specific sutra, the Buddha introduces a concept that is rare in other teachings: the scent eater. The Buddha called it the scent eater, like a spirit that enters the womb to create a pregnancy. We use the term enter the womb to make it easy to understand, but the Buddha never used this phrase. We'll discuss how it enters the womb later. So, the scent eater is what goes into the womb, and therefore the consciousness in the 12 links of dependent origination is not the soul that enters the womb. It is simply the mind consciousness, or to be more precise, it is the consciousness aggregate from the 5 aggregates. This shows how all of the Buddha's teachings are unified and consistent. And since consciousness is the consciousness aggregate, then volitional formations aren't just karmic actions. They are the volitional formations aggregate, which goes from the most subtle mind to the coarsest mind. Let's also take a moment to understand the word Duyên, dependent origination. The word Duyên has many meanings, depending on the context. For example, In the context of cause and effect, it's an adjective that means related. For instance, when we see two friends who get along so well and help each other, we say they have Duyên with each other, meaning they had a good connection in the past. So, in the context of karma and cause and effect, Duyên is an adjective, meaning related. In the context of prajna, wisdom, as in this house is made of dependent origination, the word Duyên is a noun, meaning condition. We can say that this house is made up of many conditions or factors. So, in the context of prajna, Duyên is a noun meaning condition or factor. But in the 12 links of dependent origination, Duyên is a verb. It means to cause the activity of the next one. For example, when we say ignorance gives rise to volitional formations, it means ignorance causes the activity of volitional formations. When we say volitional formations give rise to consciousness, it means volitional formations cause the activity of consciousness. So, in the 12 links of dependent origination, Duyên is a verb. It means to cause the activity or existence of the one that follows. Every sutra, every teaching, every context has its own specific meaning. The same word can have 3 different meanings, depending on the subject. So, as we said, the 12 links of dependent origination only speak of 2 lives. The previous life and the next life, not 3 lives, past, present, and future. The previous life is the process of the mind, which leads to clinging, which are the karmic actions. And it's precisely this karma that creates the realm for us to go to in the next life. Now, let's talk about each link. What is ignorance? Who knows? Tell me, because honestly, I don't know either. I'm telling you the truth, I don't know. Why? Because to truly see ignorance, you must have attained the level of an arhat or a Buddha. No one else can see what ignorance is. We only hear the Buddha talk about it. We hear the Buddha say there is a state of ignorance. No one can see it. To see it means it has been dissolved. And at that very moment, you attain enlightenment. It's not easy. So, for now, we'll just say that ignorance is the most fundamental and primitive layer of delusion in beings. That's all we can say, because we cannot truly know what it looks like. The mind is too subtle. Think of the 5 aggregates: form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, and consciousness. Consciousness is already extremely subtle, right? We can barely see the perception aggregate's activity, how it creates thoughts. But once we get to the volitional formations aggregate, we can't see it anymore unless we attain the 3rd jhana. The consciousness aggregate is even more subtle, and ignorance is even more subtle than the consciousness aggregate. So we cannot see what ignorance is at all. Only enlightened beings can. But we can just think of it as the most basic layer of delusion. From this ignorance, it drives the activity of the volitional formations aggregate. We've talked about the 5 aggregates briefly, right? Did you read the book, What Are the 5 Aggregates? For those who have, please raise your hand so I know. 2 people. What about the rest? The 5 aggregates are the fundamental structure of Buddhist psychology, so you must know it. When you understand that, learning these sutras becomes easier. You should try to find and read what are the 5 aggregates to understand more. Here, the volitional formations aggregate is the consciousness aggregate. But isn't it strange that the volitional formations aggregate acts first, and the consciousness aggregate acts later? Do you see that? We said that the 12 links of dependent origination is a process from the most subtle to the coarsest, so why does the coarser volitional formations aggregate act first? Did the Buddha make a mistake? No, the Buddha did not make a mistake. This is a true testament to the Buddha's wisdom. That's why the more I practice, study, and teach, the more I admire the Buddha. His wisdom is truly incredible. We learn about the 12 links of dependent origination, the Noble Eightfold Path, and the 4 Noble Truths as soon as we enter the path. We know them from the very first days. But the process of the 12 links of dependent origination is impossible to see unless you're enlightened. Without the Buddha, no one would have ever known what it is. No one would have known what ignorance is and how it activates the volitional formations aggregate. As I said, the Noble Eightfold Path is simple. It starts with right view, then right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. These are simple concepts. We learn them immediately and memorize them as soon as we enter the temple. But without the Buddha, no one would have been able to create such a tight and logical sequence. The Noble Eightfold Path is extremely logical and flawless. It is so simple, but if we were to fully explain it, it would take a lifetime. Now, even if we practice to the ends of the earth and study all the sutras, we can never step outside the Noble Eightfold Path if we are practicing correctly. If we practice the wrong way, we'll step outside of it, but if we practice the Buddha's authentic path, we can never get out. We just don't understand it completely, or we practice incorrectly. And that's why the 12 links of dependent origination are the same. This is why I keep practicing and learning, and my reverence for the Buddha grows day by day. I see that he is truly a master of wisdom. Some people may attain deep concentration and have psychic powers. They may know past and future lives, read minds, and know all sorts of secrets, but they still cannot see the Dharma like this. So, the wisdom of a true master who can reveal the Dharma is so great that psychic powers are meaningless and insignificant. This wisdom is what's truly admirable. So, the fact that ignorance activates volitional formations before consciousness is a marvelous thing. But why does ignorance activate the coarser volitional formations first, while the consciousness aggregate is much more subtle? Who knows? Tell me, because I don't know either. Why? Because it's a natural principle of the universe. Think about it. Have you ever planted a tree, peanuts, beans, or anything? We start by putting the seed in the ground, and it sprouts, right? What happens when it sprouts? Have you noticed? The seed splits into two. What comes up first? The root goes down first, and then the sprout comes up later. When you eat a mung bean sprout, the long white part is the root, and the small green part is the leaf sprout, which comes up later. As soon as the seed splits, the root goes down. That's the principle of planting a tree. When the tree grows tall, it has a root system. And right at the junction of the root system and the stem, foresters call it the stem. If we compare this to the mind structure, this is the volitional formations aggregate, and the root system is the consciousness aggregate. So, the consciousness aggregate is subtle and goes deep into the ground. The volitional formations aggregate, as we said, is the den of the ego and it's coarser. But when it's active, it's indeed the first to move. It has a base first, and then it sends down the consciousness aggregate. After that, it starts to split and grow upwards into the perception aggregate. So it's true. It's truly the Buddha's wisdom that he established the mind's process from coarse to subtle. Form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, and consciousness, with consciousness being the most subtle. But in the 12 links, the volitional formations act first. This is truly the Buddha's wisdom, not a mistake. He stated this many times, and it is truly wisdom. Like the formulas for attaining the first jhana and the second jhana, the Buddha repeated them throughout his life, and the formula never changed. For instance, he said the first jhana is like a basin of soap water. Those who have attained it will know. If you haven't, you'll just have to deal with it. So we'll continue. Ignorance drives the activity of the volitional formations aggregate, which is the den of the ego, the place of reasoning, creativity, planning, and so on. The volitional formations aggregate acts, and then the consciousness aggregate acts later. The next link is mentality-materiality. Mentality is the mind, and materiality is the body. Do you know this? Let's assume you don't. Materiality is the physical form, the body, and the mind is something we can only name, but we can't see its form, so it's called mentality. In the past, it was called mentality-materiality, but now we would call it mind and body or spirit and physical body. The mind gradually acts until it reaches this point, where it is fully developed as spirit and a physical body. At this stage of mentality-materiality, the activity of the perception aggregate is already present, and at the same time, the physical body has started to act. This means the mind acts and causes our hands and feet to move. That's the activity of mentality-materiality. It's easy to understand, right? Next are the 6 sense bases. What are the 6 sense bases? The 6 senses, right? eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Thanks to these, we can make contact with the world and know what it's like and what colors look like. The 6 sense bases are fascinating because each being has different senses. The term 6 sense bases represents human beings in general who are not disabled. For example, a blind person only has 5 senses or even 4, and there are other beings who have completely different senses. A sighted person who becomes blind cannot see the world of colors and shapes, but they can only understand the world through sounds, or whether something is hard or soft, hot or cold. Only the senses of touch and hearing are most active. A person born blind will never understand what a blue sky with white clouds is, or what a young woman with a graceful figure is. They can't make poetry about them. But amazingly, some blind people have written poetry. For example, the song Eyes O by the blind musician. He wrote, "The flying kite. What do I owe the sky of my homeland? A flying kite?" He's never seen a kite flying, but he heard the description and wrote such a beautiful poem. I don't know how they imagine things, but they can't see them. They only experience a person through their voice. A husky voice, or a voice that sounds like a duck underwater. They recognize people by their voice. And objects, they touch them to feel them. A person who loses their sight later in life, say at 15, suffers greatly. They can't see the world, and the most painful thing is the images of their loved ones slowly fading from their memory. They try to hold on, but they can't. After 7 or 8 years, they can't remember their parents' faces anymore. It's incredibly painful. If they want to recall their mother's face, they have to reach out and touch it. "Mom, let me touch your face today. You've gotten old and have wrinkles." That's all. They can't picture it. The part of their brain that processes visual information loses its function over time. That's why they suffer more than those who are born blind. But on the other hand, their other senses are much stronger. Their sense of touch can feel the softness and hardness in every tiny detail. For instance, when we hold a piece of paper, we know it's paper. A blind person, however, can tell the difference between 2 different types of paper just by touching them. They can tell if a paper is cheap or good just by touch. We need our eyes to see the difference. There's a story from Charlie Chaplin's script, later remade in Hong Kong, that is quite moving. A poor young vagrant fell in love with a blind flower girl on the street. He thought that because she was blind, she didn't know he was poor, so he pretended to be rich. He would wait until a car stopped, walk up, buy a bouquet of flowers, and then give it back to her to win her affection. He did this for many months. One day, he was wearing his old, tattered clothes, but she couldn't see. She asked him why he was blind, and he told her he had seen a doctor. The doctor said the surgery would cost $500,000 Hong Kong dollars. In a moment of excitement, since he had always pretended to be rich, he promised to give her the money for the surgery. Overjoyed, she asked to touch his face, to remember what he looked like. She touched him, and she was able to recognize his features and remember them deep in her heart. He went to work hard to find the $500,000. Through many complications, he failed, but by chance, he was able to secretly borrow the money. He brought it to her for the surgery and then went to work hard to pay off the debt. His life became a wandering, dusty one, and his clothes were tattered. He didn't dare to go back to see her. One day, he was wandering and saw a large flower shop. He looked inside and saw her, the owner. He walked in and looked at her. "You can see now," he said. She looked at him and asked, "Are you here to buy flowers?" He shook his head. She thought he was a beggar because of his clothes and quickly took out some money to give him. He blurted out, "I'm not a beggar." She heard his voice and remembered it immediately. "Are you that person?" she asked. He shook his head, and she reached out and touched his face. She recognized him immediately. The same face, the same features. She started to cry. Why was the benefactor she thought was rich now tattered and ragged? And why would he not admit it? She knew it was him, but for some reason he wouldn't admit it. He started to cry too. She cried a river. Her husband came and asked, "What's wrong, honey?" She just looked at him and cried. The husband asked, "Is this the benefactor you told me about?" She was choked up and couldn't answer. The benefactor she thought was rich and drove a car was now tattered and ragged. In that moment of anguish, he ran off and disappeared. It's a sad story, but it shows how a blind person feels and how their senses experience the world differently. Their six sense bases are different, and so they perceive the world differently. Or take this sci-fi story. One day, aliens come to Earth to officially talk to humanity. They no longer fly around secretly. They land with great dignity. From the ship come three beings that look like three lumps of meat with no human shape. They stay in 3 tanks of water to conserve energy, afraid that the outside heat would make them lose energy quickly. They wait for humans to talk to them. Scientists from all over the world flock to meet them. They try to communicate with language, but there is no response. They make gentle movements, but they don't respond. The scientists show them mathematical formulas, but they don't respond. Then an artist comes and suggests that maybe their language is music, because music is a universal language. So they bring in a symphony orchestra. They play majestic music, but the aliens don't react. Then someone suggests that maybe they are too advanced and only like modern music. So they bring in a rock and pop band. The band jumps and dances wildly, and the aliens start to show a slight reaction. They seem to understand something of their intention, but they're not very pleased. Then they get back in their ship and fly away, leaving behind a report. It says they came from a planet and saw a star system with a planet that had life. So they came to visit. They saw signs of civilization, but the culture was too primitive. The people of Earth don't have the language of smell. On their planet, they communicate with each other not with words, but with smells. They release a pungent smell when they're angry, a sweet one when they're happy, and a foul one when they're annoyed. They can secrete thousands of different smells to express their thoughts, and these smells can combine to form a sentence. But people on Earth don't have this language of smell, so when we use sounds and images, they don't understand. But why did they react a little to the pop music? Because when people jumped wildly, they started to sweat, and when they smelled the sweat, they understood what passion meant. That's all. The people of this planet can't express any profound ideas. They can only express passion. There's nothing profound in their sweat. So they sadly got back in their ship and flew away. So, next time you meet an alien, remember to spray on some perfume. Don't just sit and talk, because it might not work. And don't get all agitated and sweaty either. There are also some animals that have different senses. For example, bats use ultrasound to see. As a bat flies, it sends out an ultrasound wave, and when it hits an object, it bounces back to its forehead and it receives it. It knows what the object in front of it is: hard, soft, big, or small. If it's a mosquito, it flies over and catches it immediately. If it's a tree or a thread, it dodges it immediately. Can even tell if it's a spider web. So the bat's sense is different from ours. It's like a long-distance sense of touch. It sends out a wave, it bounces back, and it feels what it is. It flies and dodges it. That's why bats don't get stuck in the dark. It's incredible. Or some poisonous snakes can see with infrared. When they emit an infrared beam, they can receive the temperature of what's in front of them. In a cold night, they can immediately see an animal with a body temperature above 30 degrees Celsius. We can't see it with our naked eyes. For example, we sit in the dark and we can't see a frog over there. We don't know, but a snake in the dark sees it because it sees with infrared. It slithers over and sees a hot lump of a living creature. Or it can detect a large hot mass, and it knows immediately that it's a human and not edible, so it goes somewhere else. So, it has its own sense and perceives the world in its own way. During the day, it's blind because everywhere is hot, and it can't distinguish between a living creature and a rock or a tree. But at night, everything is cold, and as soon as it detects an animal with a body temperature of 27 to 28 degrees and up, it recognizes it and goes to find it. So, in some desert areas at night, don't move around too much. There may be snakes hiding in the sand dunes, and when you step on the sand, it detects a hot mass. If it's hungry, it will strike immediately and accurately because of its 6 sense bases. The term six sense bases is a general term, but they are the senses, and each species or each planet has different ones so that they can contact the world. Then there's contact. We make contact and we feel the world like this. When we feel the world, many things happen. Thanks to our senses, we can meet and talk to each other. We understand the human world is like this. We meet good people and bad people. We experience happy things and painful things. Contact is like that. There are times we win the lottery and that's a type of contact. We feel joy, but there are also times when we are cursed and scolded. So, contact is the circumstances in life that affect our mind. Contact is the circumstances and situations that come to us in this life, in this world. Some people lose their parents when they grow up. That's a painful circumstance that comes to them. Or a person who is born into a rich family is a person who has good and happy circumstances. That's what contact is. And because of that contact, it activates feeling. What is feeling? My goodness, you all look so innocent. You don't know what it is? Some of you are so pure, it's a sin. They don't know what it is, and they're afraid to answer. We can translate it as love, but that's just a general term. It's more accurate to say love and hate. But even that's not complete. In the past, there weren't many words, so they used craving. Now we'd use emotions. There are many types of emotions. Love is an emotion, and hate is an emotion. How many types of emotions are there? A lot, right? For instance, with hate, we have boredom, dislike, or even stronger indignation or hatred. And there are all the small emotions before we get to extreme contempt. And with love, there's liking and fondness. For example, when we first meet a person and they seem decent and good, we have a little fondness. After getting to know them, we see that they are kind and considerate, and we feel a deeper fondness. Then after a year, we see that they are so good and take care of us in every way. We feel a love that can't be described. Then one day, the police come and arrest them. Turns out they are a criminal, a fraud on the run. Our feelings fall to the ground. Our heart sinks. We start to understand that they were just using us to hide. Our fondness turns into contempt and hatred. And in that contempt and hatred, there is also regret. Regret that they were so good. But why did they turn out to be a criminal? Life is full of these emotions. This is how emotions evolve. Or, for example, if someone offends us and we know the Dharma, we get angry for a bit, then we contemplate and let it go. Our anger subsides. But for a person who doesn't know the Dharma, their anger is so strong that it turns into a grudge. They hold a grudge in their heart. Or, for instance, if a person harms our loved one, like in the old stories where someone kills our father or mother and we hold a grudge, that's called hatred. Or when people in a country are oppressed by an invading force, they feel hatred toward the invaders. As you can see, emotions have many forms. Brothers and sisters in the temple are the same. We live together, but each of us has different emotions toward each other, depending on our past karma and how we treat each other in this life. There are people with whom we had a good connection in a past life, and we meet in this life and continue to be fond of each other. And there are people with whom we had a bad relationship in a past life, and we meet in this life and continue to be enemies. I've experienced this myself. So, I have many enemies in my life. I live a carefree life and don't pay attention to anyone, but I'm always harmed and hated by many people, even though I treat everyone well. This is karma from a past life. In a past life, when I had power, I wasn't patient enough with bad people. I saw them with their vicious schemes to harm others, and I wasn't patient enough to transform them. So, I decided to end their existence and ordered their execution. Bad people usually hold grudges. They hold a grudge until this life and try to harm me, even though I haven't done anything to them. I was just doing my duty and then let go. But those who were harmed hold a grudge for many lives. And sometimes they also create a lot of merit and rise to a position where they have enough power. So, with bad people, we must be patient. For instance, we can try to control them so they don't harm others, but we must also try to transform them. Don't take the easy way out by ordering their execution. It's quick and easy, but the hatred will last. That's why a person like Bao Zong Bao Zhang, in his future lives, will have many enemies. When we watch the movie Justice Bao, the first 2 episodes, have you seen it? Here, you might not have the opportunity, but in Saigon, the monks watch movies every day. They know them very well. I live on a mountain, so I don't get to watch much, but once in a while, when I go back to Saigon to teach and the movie Justice Bao is on TV, I get hooked. There's a lot of Buddhist teachings in it, and the plot is interesting. There's also Trian Chiu, the bodyguard, who's great with a sword. It's very cool. But that's the thing. Sometimes a righteous person who is too straightforward can be a disadvantage. We need great compassion. That's why we need great compassion in the cycle of rebirth. Sometimes we get too annoyed with bad people, and that's not good for our future lives. So, when we know a person is bad, we must be patient and try to transform them. Being too harsh is also not good. Then craving leads to clinging. Craving causes the activity of clinging. We've always translated clinging as attachment, but no, this clinging is the act of creating karma that causes so many terrible things. And when we have created karma, we enter the next life into becoming. Our karma creates a becoming for us to go to. If we create good karma, the becoming is a place of peace and happiness. If we create bad karma, the becoming is a place of pain and suffering. If we live without morals, our becoming in the next life is in the animal realm. If we are wicked, it is in hell. If we are stingy, it is in the hungry ghost realm. If we live a saintly and altruistic life, it is in the heavenly realms. These are the 6 paths the Buddha talked about. So, in this becoming, we have. Now, let's talk about craving and clinging for a moment. We can see that the stronger the craving, the greater the clinging. The stronger the emotion, the greater the action, right? For example, if we love a person a little, we help them a little. But if we love them with our whole life, more than ourselves, we'll give them all our money. That's why a poet said, "Love is losing a little something from your home. A little something because you only love a little. But if you love too much, love is losing everything from your home." It's the same thing. Why do some great people do great things? Because they have great emotions. For instance, the people of a colonized country have great hatred and love for their country. The more they love their country, the more they hate the invaders, and they'll do great things to regain their homeland. They become great people. Great emotions create great actions. So, great people are those with great emotions. We are the same. In the future, you can become great monks, virtuous teachers, or people who leave a legacy for humanity, depending on whether your craving is great. No, I should say, whether your soul is great. Do you have a great love for the Buddha, the Dharma, and sentient beings? If you have absolute reverence for the Buddha, a constant concern for the fate of the Dharma, and boundless love for all sentient beings, and you can't rest at night because you see beings drowning in darkness and suffering, then you will be able to do great things for the Dharma. But a person who was just persuaded to enter the temple, shaved their head, and went to school and graduated, but has no reverence for the Buddha, and doesn't care about the fate of the Dharma or whether sentient beings are happy or sad, will never be able to do anything great in their life. So when the craving is great, great emotions and great souls create great undertakings. So it's the same here. For example, later when I teach you how to give a Dharma talk, the first thing I will tell you to do is to cultivate a love for sentient beings. Only when you love sentient beings boundlessly and you are concerned about the fate of the Dharma day and night can you become an excellent Dharma speaker. Clinging is becoming a Dharma speaker according to your karma. But if you don't have love for sentient beings at first, you will never be able to give a good Dharma talk. If you're a good speaker and charismatic, it's merit from a past life that will eventually run out. So, a certain businessman said, "Only great souls can find great happiness." A great soul means a great heart with great emotions. And what is great happiness? It's the great joy we feel after doing many beneficial things for sentient beings. This is very natural. For example, when you only have 3 sets of clothes and you see a new brother who is struggling, and you give him 1 set, you're left with 2, which is a difficult situation for a monk. But at that moment, you accept the sacrifice to help that person, and in that noble sacrifice, the joy may last for a whole year. When we do something good, the joy lasts. Imagine if we can love all sentient beings, be concerned about the Dharma, and create so many merits and do so many beneficial things for sentient beings and build up the Dharma. The joy that follows is endless. That's why the businessman said, "Only great souls can have great happiness." However, a person who knows how to practice will skillfully let go of that happiness and not hold on to it. They will continue to sacrifice and endure difficulties to do beneficial things for sentient beings. They will never stop for a second to feel their own happiness. They must let it go, because if you stop and enjoy the happiness, selfishness will arise. This is a subtle point that is not in this lesson today, so we won't go into it. So, clinging leads to becoming, which is the realm we go to. We have the 3 realms and the 6 paths. Becoming is truly the circumstance for the next life. As we said, when we have a realm to go to, we enter the womb to prepare for a new life. And in this new life, we must accept old age, sickness, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. Here, pain and grief belong to the circumstances of suffering and adversity, and sorrow and lamentation is mental suffering. These two are different. Pain and grief are suffering from circumstances that are not as we wish. Sorrow and lamentation is mental suffering. When there is life, these things like old age, sickness, death, mental suffering, and difficult circumstances will always be there. That's the principle. Cannot be avoided. Human life is so miserable, twisted, and bitter. It means that anyone who lives in this world will feel tired and suffer. When we are young and have a lot of hope, that hope covers up our present suffering. But when a person passes the age of 40, they are old, and there is no more hope to cover up the suffering. So we see human life more clearly. We see that human life is so tiring and painful. The only difference is that since we know the Dharma, in that suffering, we accept to dedicate ourselves to continue doing beneficial things for sentient beings. That is different from a person who, when they see that life is suffering, turns their back and tries to avoid it. They seek peace and are content with their lot. But when we pass the age of 40 and there's not much to hope for, we look back at life clearly. But what about a person who creates good karma? For example, a person with bad karma is born in a bad place and has a lot of bitterness, that's true. But a person who creates a lot of good karma will be born in a new place, for example, in the heavenly realms. So, these sufferings don't exist, right? So, is it true that the 12 links of dependent origination is wrong? No, it's not wrong. Why? Because the heavenly realms are happy and free, but there are still some underlying subtle sufferings. They are not as coarse or clear as in the human or animal realms or hell, but they still have their own subtle sorrows. They are not gone yet. So, we've talked about the 12 links of dependent origination. Does anyone have any questions? If so, please ask immediately so we can move on to the next section. No one is asking, so I'll continue. Let's talk about the states of existence when this physical body no longer has life. In Buddhism, we talk about 6 paths, right? Humans and animals have physical bodies, but the other 4, hell, hungry ghosts, asuras, and devas, do not. They belong to the supernatural world. Now, let's look at this from a scientific perspective. We can see that the parent's intimacy creates the first condition. The father's sperm is present, and the mother is in a fertile period, which means her ovary has released an egg. For science, these two are enough to form a fetus. But for the Buddha's view, one more thing is missing. The scent eater, a spiritual factor. Without the spiritual factor, a fetus cannot be formed. Usually, when an egg is released from the mother's ovary, we cannot see it with our eyes. We have to use a microscope to see it because the egg is too small and the sperm is even smaller. Among the countless sperms, only one can enter the egg and form an embryo. Then the embryo grows, gradually. But this first egg is too small to be seen with the naked eye. But there's one more thing. There must be a scent eater. This is very subtle. You must be very astute to understand this. Monks and laypeople, please pay attention. A person who is about to be reborn and has a karmic connection with a family Their consciousness is already drawn to that family and is hanging around. There is not far. Before the moment of conception, the soul of the consciousness has already arrived. The karmic connection has been formed. It's been seen. It has been pushed and pulled and is interested in that family. If the karma is anger, it hears the family arguing and likes it, so it will be reborn into a family that always argues. If the karma is music, it hears the family singing karaoke and likes it, so it hangs around there and waits for the moment of rebirth. When the sperm enters the egg, the scent eater standing nearby dissolves and is absorbed into it. It disappears completely and is completely gone. When the embryo is formed, when the sperm has entered and a new life has begun, there is no brain yet. So we no longer remember anything. That's why people say that when we are reborn, we eat a magical porridge to forget. There's no magical porridge. It's just that when the embryo is first formed, it doesn't have a brain, so it can't remember, and the memories we had in the scent eater are gone at that moment. The scent eater dissolves completely. At the same time, the sperm enters and puts its genes together with the genes in the egg. The egg has half of the mother's genes, and the sperm has half of the father's genes. When the genes are arranged to form an embryo, the scent eater disappears immediately, and a new being appears, completely forgetting the past. It only develops according to the karma from the past. The karma from the past creates two things. One is our genes, which determine our physical characteristics, how smart we are, how healthy we are, and what diseases we will have. It's all from the genes. And the karma creates the second thing, the circumstances we will live in, what kind of family, whether we're poor or rich, and what kind of education we will get. It's all our circumstances. The karma creates both. It arranges our genes in the embryo, and when we are born, the same karma continues to create our circumstances. And there must be all three factors. Science only sees two and doesn't see the scent eater. This is a flaw in science. Perhaps in a few hundred years, science will also discover this. Currently, scientists are researching asexual reproduction or cloning, which is like this. Asexual means it doesn't need a sexual combination of the father's and mother's genes. In this process, there must be 46 chromosomes, right? 23 from the father and 23 from the mother, which form 46 chromosomes. The two combine to form a new embryo. In asexual cloning, scientists do this. They remove the 23 chromosomes from the mother's egg and leave an empty egg with no genes. They don't need the father's sperm, and they also get rid of the mother's genes. They find a person they choose, for example, a handsome, moral, and smart person. They take a gene from him and put it in the egg, and it will have all 46 chromosomes. So, there's no need for sexual activity. The embryo will gradually grow, and they will put it back into the uterus of a surrogate mother. The embryo will develop into a fetus. When the baby is born, it will be exactly like the chosen person, not a single hair different. From the cute smile and dimples to the handsome looks, everything will be exactly the same. That's asexual cloning. But they complain that they have done this thousands of times, and only one was successful. The other thousands of embryos didn't develop. Why? Because the third factor is missing, the scent eater. Not every being is willing to be reborn through asexual cloning. Not every being has the karma to be born without a father and a mother and to be reborn through this kind of method. No, only those who have that karma will be reborn in this way. In those cases, the scientist was successful. They may have implanted 1,000 eggs, but only one being had the karma to be reborn through this asexual method, so that embryo was successful and developed into a fetus. And why did that being have to be reborn in a test tube through this asexual method? Because in the past life, that being was a scientist who was obsessed with asexual reproduction, so when he died, he received the karmic retribution of being reborn in this way. That's why there are very few cases of asexual cloning. There is also the case of taking over a body, like in the old stories. For example, Ong Tu Vin, the father of Zen master Tu Dao Han, was killed by his enemy, who hired a sorcerer to kill. The sorcerer died, but he had not been reborn yet. He went to a fishing village, and when a baby boy was born in a family, he killed the baby and took over his body. So when the sorcerer grew up, he was a prince in the palace, but he was reborn here by mistake. He knew everything about the past and future. He knew what was happening in the king's palace and what was happening in the fishing village. The baby knew everything. He knew when it would rain or storm and told them exactly. The news spread to the palace, and the king was surprised. The officials said that if he were the crown prince, he should have been born in the palace, not in this fishing village. This is a strange and evil thing. Zen master Tu Dao Han, who had already left and was practicing Buddhism after killing him, knew that this was the sorcerer who had returned. He continued to use his magic to kill the baby once more to make the sorcerer leave that body forever. That's the case of taking over a body. A while ago, a nun told me about her mother's case, who was like a ghost had taken over her body. She didn't know what it was, so she asked me, and I confirmed that it was a case of taking over a body, because in her house, there was a grave underneath, so they often saw a ghost wandering around until her mother died. Her mother died for a few hours and suddenly came back to life and became a completely different person. She said her mother ate foods she had never liked, was fierce, and chased people around. She became a completely different person and knew everything about the past and future. She knew what was on people's minds and what had happened. She knew everything. There's a lot more that can be said about the value of offering food to the deceased. We must know that many souls in the supernatural world are hungry and suffering. They need food and drink, so we must try to feed them every day. The temple must offer food to them. Don't offer uncooked rice and salt. You must offer cooked rice, cooked porridge, and the food you eat. Just a little, but we must pray to the Buddha for his power to transform this food into an infinite amount so that all beings can be full. They will be very grateful to us. We are creating merit without spending a lot of money, only our mind. But if we create merit in the human world, it costs a lot. We have to give away a lot of wealth. But when we offer food to those in the supernatural world, it doesn't cost a lot, but it requires a lot of mind, and the merit is also very great. We will be reborn in a state where we are always full. We will never be hungry or lacking. And in our current life, we often have good luck because those souls secretly help us. They repay their gratitude. Now, let's talk about something else. We see that, according to the sutras, if we want to end the process of rebirth, we must end ignorance. The sutras say that when ignorance ends, volitional formations stop, consciousness stops, and so on. But if we want to end ignorance, we must pass the 4 jhanas. Is that easy? Is it easy? Who has attained it? Raise your hand. It's not easy. That is a goal that is not easy to attain. So, in the 12 links of dependent origination, if we say that if we want to end rebirth, we must end ignorance, that sentence sounds so simple, but we can't do it because we have to pass the 4 jhanas. To be able to end ignorance. This is difficult. Of course, to end ignorance and attain the 4 jhanas, we must go back and follow the Noble Eightfold Path. We must start with right view, then right speech, right action, and so on, and then we attain right mindfulness and right concentration, which are the 4 jhanas, and then we end ignorance. So it's very difficult. It's not easy. We have to go back to the Noble Eightfold Path and practice gradually. We must attain deep meditative concentration, and to attain that, we must have a lot of merit. That's what's in right speech and right action. We create merit and help people without thinking of ourselves. That's right speech and right action. Then, right mindfulness and right concentration will appear. Today, we have not talked about the Noble Eightfold Path, so we will save it for when we talk about the 4 Noble Truths, and we will talk about it in more detail. That is a very logical process. Here, there's a difference. Ignorance and wrong view are different. Wrong view is a wrong understanding. Sometimes a person is still ignorant like us, but they do not have a wrong view. We have ignorance but no wrong view because none of us here have attained enlightenment yet, so we are still ignorant, but we have learned the right Dharma. We believe in cause and effect. We believe in rebirth. We understand the Noble Eightfold Path. So we do not have a wrong view. We are ignorant but still have right view. And there are also cases where some people have attained meditative concentration but still have a wrong view. Like sorcerers and magicians, those people have a lot of concentration. They have psychic powers and know things, but they still have a wrong view. They still have a wrong understanding. Here, monks and laypeople, be careful. Don't believe that just because someone has psychic powers, they have enough wisdom and right view. No, don't be mistaken. Sometimes they still have a wrong view. So, ignorance and right view and wrong view are different. On the path of practicing meditative concentration, we have unintentionally stopped creating bad karma and are only creating good karma. And our mind is purified, so our craving also changes. It is no longer selfish love, but it has become compassion. The craving has subsided. The feeling is lighter. We no longer have excessive emotional responses. We no longer have excessive sorrow or joy because our mind has subsided and has been purified. So the contact, the circumstances with the outside world, we are calm and less agitated. We can find a quiet place to practice and do not like to be in a place with a lot of agitation. And as for the sixth sense bases, we are no longer directed outward, but our mind is usually at peace and controls our inner being. So the activity of the senses is lighter, and with this body and mind, it gradually becomes pure. Then we control the volitional formations aggregate and the consciousness aggregate, and then we get to ignorance. So these are very deep levels of meditation. But on the way, we must go back from here. From clinging, we go back up. We let go of the karmic actions, lessen the craving, lessen the feelings, lessen the contact, lessen the six sense bases, and gradually transform to good, to pure, to clear. Then we can gradually enter deep concentration and end the volitional formations aggregate, the consciousness aggregate, and then end ignorance, which is what the Buddha said. That is the difficult part. Now let's compare two cases. First, a person who knows the Dharma buries themselves in a quiet, secluded place until they are liberated and end rebirth forever. Second, a person who knows the Dharma practices and, at the same time, spreads the Dharma and helps others to know the Dharma so that the Dharma can spread. Which type of person would you choose? The first type or the second type? The second type. Good. That's the right choice. Only by doing so can the Dharma exist. But a person who understands the Dharma and then buries themselves in a quiet place to practice until they attain enlightenment, this person has not yet attained enlightenment, and the Dharma outside has already disappeared. Therefore, if we have an altruistic mind, we must practice and, at the same time, work to spread the Dharma. Here, we must not separate these two things. We must not separate our personal liberation from the building of goodness and happiness for the world. We must see that our personal liberation and the building of a moral, peaceful, and happy world are one. We must see it that way. And when we practice, we must understand that practicing, learning, and creating merit are all for the sake of others. But if we don't understand all three of them, practicing, learning, and creating merit are for our own sake. For example, we practice and think we are practicing for our own enlightenment and liberation. That is practicing for our own sake. We learn to be smart for our own sake. We create merit to have a good life for our own sake. But if we know how to change our perspective, those three things are all for the sake of others. We practice for the sake of sentient beings, not for our own sake. We practice for the sake of others. When we sit in meditation, every moment we fight with our thoughts is for the sake of others. We learn to know the path of practice so that we can spread it to sentient beings in the future, not for our own sake, not for our own glory or diploma. That is learning for the sake of others. And creating merit is truly doing beneficial things for sentient beings, so this is truly for the sake of others, not for seeking merit for ourselves. All three are for the sake of others. The three things, practicing, learning, and creating merit, if we know they are for the sake of others, they are completely different. If we don't know, they are also for our own sake. Externally, they are the same. We also practice, learn, and create merit, but internally, the intention of being for our own sake or for the sake of others is completely different. So here, monks and laypeople, you must control your mind in those three things. You must make sure that in those three things, practicing, learning, and creating merit, you do them completely for the sake of sentient beings and not for your own sake. Be careful about that. At the end of the sutra, the Buddha talks about the conduct of a monastic, but this Dharma talk is long, so we will not talk about it today. However, I have composed this sutra into a 5-word gatha a long time ago for the temple to recite. I have printed that gatha in this book. You can photocopy it and read it for fun and recite it. It is a 5-word gatha. A monk like that, his mind is calm and happy. He does not regret or fear because he has not made any mistakes. For example, he does not speak words that create division and hatred. He only speaks words of peace to create love. Those are some parts of the sutra. The sutra is in prose, and it is spoken in a monotone, but I have rewritten it into a 5-word gatha so it is easy to recite. I see that the conduct of a monastic is a very good and standard process that the Buddha laid out. So, I also give it back to you monks for fun. They are the basic and standard stages. Now let's pay attention to this for a moment. If craving is the cause of suffering, then conversely, compassion is the cause of happiness, right? Because craving and compassion are opposites. So, if craving is a bondage, then compassion is the cause that leads to liberation. We don't need to destroy craving, but we must replace craving. We can't destroy it. If we destroy it on one side, it will pop up on the other. We just need to love people and love sentient beings. This craving will gradually be replaced, and the path will open up. Remember that. One more thing. The whole temple and I are exhausted from grading your papers, so from now on, please make them shorter. Please, we are honestly tired. If you make them short, it will be easy to grade, but you will not become good in the future. In the future, it will be difficult for you to give Dharma talks. You must write long papers to be able to give Dharma talks later. In the past, I also used to write a lot before I gave a Dharma talk. So, when I teach, I force the monks and nuns to write long papers. Some monks and nuns also complained and said that I was not doing it right. Why do you make us write such long papers? But later, they told me I did the right thing, because it is precisely when the monks and nuns write long papers that they have to dig out the details. They have to find a complete and tight meaning. So, they will be very good at giving Dharma talks later. So, because the temple is tired, please don't write long papers for me to grade. Have your own notebook and write your own long papers to save as materials for yourself. Sometimes, the short paper you submit to me, I only give you 8 points, but the long paper you write, you can give yourself 11 points. It's okay. No one will complain. Does anyone have any more questions? No one is asking, so I'll stop here.